Hey, Andrew, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me. I'm currently a senior account executive with Neil Patel Digital. So a lot of people know of Neil Patel and his kind of his voice in the marketing industry and SaaS and everything like that. Not very many people know that we have a global agency, so it's called NP Digital. My claim to fame here is I'm the first W-2 employee of this company, and we've grown from four of us to now into the hundreds and offices around the world. So it's quite a story. It's been quite a journey. And my main role is sales, and most of that is inbound. But my experience in sales goes back like 15 years.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that if you want, or
Well, let's
stay here.
Because I find selling it like an agency, because I've sold to marketing people to get partnerships with the podcast. I don't do a digital agency or anything, and haven't followed Neil for quite a while. How did you know him? Were you friends, or were you just applying for the job?
It's interesting. Neil's partner, Mike Camo, is kind of the quiet partner arm, running our agency and their partnership and these different operations we have. And it was back in early 2017, and we met through Angel List he was quietly putting the feelers out for, we're going to launch this agency officially, have a public facing entity as a digital marketing company. But I knew of Neil, and we ran in the same circles. A lot of people that kind of came out of the Dan Kennedy, old direct response marketing space, the Frank Kerns of the world, the Ryan Dices, Perry Marshalls, and Neil and Mike kind of run in that same circle. And I also did as well. So we overlapped, and I saw that, and I already knew of Neil's prominence and everything he did with Crazy Egg and Quick Sprout and Kissmetrics. And I said, well, this could be something big, and it might be something I want to, get involved with early. So that's how we met, basically.
Was it the first time you sold services versus a product?
No, actually, my journey goes back to selling cars. And I heard someone else you interviewed said, they started in car sales.
Yeah.
I started back in 2005. That was my first real sales job. And I was the rookie of the year. All these great things were happening. They were like, "Oh, this kid's going to be amazing." And then we had this crazy winter, storms and everything. And I hit that rookie slump and thought I was a big shot, and basically collapsed. So I left sales. I left the car industry, went into restaurants, the Cheesecake Factory, realized I don't want to be managing people in a restaurant. It's the worst job ever.
Oh God!
Even at a Cheesecake Factory is a great company.
It's a high-end restaurant.
San Francisco, Corte Madera, Marin. That's all great, but there's no life there. You're just a zombie. So I said, I've got to get out of this. Had my first child, and said, I'm going back into my own business essentially. But when you run your own business, it's sales.
It's everything.
And so my jump back in was in logistics and a trucking brokerage. My friend owned a big trucking brokerage. I started an agency within that. And it's all on you, so you're the one fulfilling and you're the one selling, just pounding on doors, pounding phones. And it took me almost a year. This was right during the recession in 2009, the worst time to get into almost any business, but trucking, trucking itself was, it was bad. And everyone's fighting over scraps, and it took me almost a year to get anything going. And my friend just said, just keep going. And then I finally struck gold with like Forever 21, some big companies that were basically just like, name your price. We built all their stores in North America. Then I got in with a lot of the big biotech and larger electronics manufacturers out of the San Diego area. So things were really, really good. And so that was my leap back into sales and entrepreneurship. And at the same time, I realized we've got to have a better system for getting leads. So I started learning direct response marketing. That's where I entered that world of direct response and the Dan Kennedy world. That's where my circles overlapped with Neil.
Yeah.
In that process. And I kept my eye on something else, like trucking's, there's going to be some shakeups. There's going to be automation. Brokers are going to get squeezed out, just this manual process. But anyway, that was the services business that I was in for a long time. But I kept, thinking, okay, what's next for me? I started other businesses, a juice business. I got into, so I started to get pretty good at marketing itself and outbound sales and copywriting. So I worked with some other tech companies, and a company out of Newport Beach, another company out of Austin, Texas, and really high ticket B2B SaaS. But that was difficult too. Like I kind of picked the wrong companies that were nice to haves and they weren't must haves and didn't have a lot of positioning. I was the one creating a lot of their marketing and stuff. It was tough. And then that was right before I launched into this. So that's my journey.
Because San Diego, is beautiful. But and there is some technology companies there, but it's kind of a lifestyle city, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Right.
We're known. The joke here is that nobody works. Like if you go down the street right now, downtown or in the beaches, you were talking about like some people's parents, were entrepreneurs or they were salesmen. And he was a door-to-door salesman back in the 70s. And is an absolutely fearless communicator. Like he can just knock on anyone's door and just start a conversation for no reason at all. And he could probably sell you something, but he's a chiropractor. He moved into that career path. I was never that much never an extrovert, very introverted, growing up, but my work ethic came from, having a somewhat difficult childhood and playing a lot of sports like wrestling, football, basketball, track, you name it. I mean, I've got my teeth kicked in by a lot of like really tough-nosed coaches, that were just really hard, but very like driven. And that's where I gained my work ethic.
That's it. When I talk to anybody who's done wrestling, I never did it. My older brother did, so you get into that, doing anything to get into the weight class right below it.
Oh,
and it's 1-to-1. You either win or lose.
Yeah.
And the training's intense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would crank up the heat in the wrestling room, close all the doors, turn the heat up to like 120 degrees. And, guys are just passing out and coaches are like, get up,
Yeah. No water.
I don't care if you're puking. Yeah. No. Yeah. Those are back. This was back in the early mid 90s when that stuff still happened. Coaches thought drinking water was for sissies and, so what if you're puking, just keep going,
Well, that's perfect training for sales.
Yeah, it really is because it's all on you.
Well, let's get into the digital marketing sale because, that market, it's anywhere from like one talented person to the super high-end agencies.
Oh, yeah.
Right? How do you differentiate yourself? And
that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things that we do is we're in the middle of that. We are, and Neil's presence is so vast. Like there are people that have followed him for 10 years, or plus 10 years plus. They've like, oh yeah, I've followed him his whole career. I know everything about Neil. I know all of his companies. I read every blog post. I implement on, Uber Suggest and all the tools that we create. And then there's people that just yesterday searched for something, they searched for SEO company and guess what? There we are. Cause we're number one or whatever we're number one for. They found us then. They have no knowledge of him. So we fall in the middle, but we're also on the services side. We serve the enterprise. We have Fortune 100 clients, but we also serve kind of the SMB mid-market as well. And that is it's a tough challenge to bucket people and speak to them appropriately. Because, people lie on forums and, they'll put in, my budget's $100,000 a month. And you realize, oh, they're just a startup. They don't have any funding. And how do you delicately move that person from, where did that money come from? And do you really have that budget? And then like moving them over to a different person to speak to them, and that's, I've always been in the middle of it where I can sell to both sides. I've been an entrepreneur. I've been, sold to CFOs of, Xerox and stuff. So I can speak to both sides, but not everyone can. So it's difficult.
How much of an adjustment was it when you first got there? Because that's it, because everyone talks the story until they have to spend the money.
You mean for our clients?
Getting used to qualifying them and really understanding what do they really want? How serious are they? Are they looking
Right.
for free consulting, which I bet a lot are.
Oh yeah, a lot. And that's fine too. Like that's kind of Neil's ethos is, like, I'll just help you and you might come back around 2 years later. So
Yeah.
and that is a challenge for us too, because this is Neil's face, his brand. So we have to treat everyone like they might be Neil's best friend. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
We really can't piss people off and treat people like dirt. And that's what Neil wants anyway. He's spending all this time and money to do that. But for me, I guess as we started, we started really from ground zero and just testing different offers in the early days. This was like 3 years ago. I don't know. It was my sweet spot. This is where I just loved, and I still do love, this process of helping someone figure out their journey and like what do they really need. And I've taken my lumps too. I've like made assumptions and then gotten down the road with someone and realized, oh, these guys don't have any budget at all, or completely the wrong fit, and I have to sell them internally too. That's a difficult part about my job. I'm not jumping all over the place, but is not only just discovering if that company and that person is the right fit, but do the people internally, everyone doing the work, do they think it's the right fit? So I have to sell it back internally. That's a challenge within our company.
And what do you typically sell? Is it a retained service, or is it a packaged number of things or hours?
It's typically deliverables based contracts. Like we don't just do retainers in most cases, but everything is really like a custom scope for us. So also very difficult. You have to understand marketing as a whole, like the concepts of it, and then how that applies to what they need specifically, because we do SEO, we do content marketing, we do paid media, CRO, conversion rate optimization, all of these different things. Like one of those could be the lever or the hinge that swings a big door for that company, or they might need all of it, and they might need all of it, but they don't have the budget for even one component. And that's the difficult thing about where we start with people.
And how do you qualify them from a financial standpoint?
We try to do that early on and get to the money conversation pretty quickly before, we get 3 phone calls deep, or, bringing in a bunch of people and realizing these guys have no budget at all, or they really don't have the intention of shifting that over. But it's just part of that first discovery call. I think that's the most important call for us as a company, is since most of it is inbound, we do some outbound and some conferences, but our website gets like 8 million visitors a month. So we're just flooded with leads.
Right.
So we really try to hold ourselves to that standard of, we're the prize. And if you're coming to us, then like you should be forthcoming with the information. So we try to pull that out of them through forms before they even schedule a call.
Yeah.
And then when we are on the call, we're validating that information in a gentle manner, not just jumping in like, hey, what's your budget? Because people they'll react to it. And we're trying to avoid reactance and then resistance. So gently leading someone through, okay, you mentioned in this form you have X budget. Is that specifically for this project you had in mind, or is that your total monthly marketing budget?
Yeah.
Things like that.
And are they cagey about giving that information?
Some people are.
You're right. Yeah.
But it totally depends on who we're talking to. And this is something I learned years ago, especially in like larger organizations, is the bigger the organization, the more that person identifies as that company. Like they're Negan, it's like the Walking Dead, everyone's Negan, right? Or if someone works for Qualcomm, they think they are Qualcomm. So when you ask them those questions, they're now thinking, okay, well, if I give them this information, then what are all these 5 people around me going to think about that? So you have to be careful with who if it's a CEO and I'm talking to the CEO, I can ask him directly, like, what is your budget on this specifically right here? I can be real direct.
Yeah.
Or if it's an entrepreneur, he's in control of the company.
And when you say budget, do you mean they can afford it or not afford it, or do they value it enough to spend the money? Because you can tell if they can afford it or not by looking on the internet. Qualcomm can afford it. Right?
For sure.
They can buy your whole company.
Of course. Easy. Yeah. In a heartbeat.
If they want to spend it is a different question.
Right. And that's where it's such a difficult conversation, especially in marketing, because it can go any different direction.
Yeah.
Is helping understand what is the need first.
Yeah.
What are they trying to do? Are they trying to generate leads? Are they trying to build visibility for a product? I know a couple of years ago, and it's still active now, like Qualcomm they really wanted to be visible for 5G. So they wanted to rank organically for 5G. They wanted, they're running billboard ads all over the place for 5G. Before that, it was like their Snapdragon chip or whatever. But what are they trying to do marketing wise for that? That we have to know that first before we can even propose anything or uncover like how much do you need to spend to do that.
Yeah.
So that's why with a bigger company, it takes many more conversations to get to that point.
Yeah.
If it's a mid-market company and like they just need leads and they know right now it costs them $100 to get a lead, like a qualified lead, and they need more of them, that's an easier conversation because we can just look at what they're doing now. Or what are you doing? Running ads on LinkedIn? Are you running ads on Facebook, Google? You're running organic? Where does it come from now? And then where do you see the most opportunity? And then we can say, well, here's what we think is the best option to go for. And here's how much it's going to cost. But we should have a good idea of what they're spending currently.
Yeah.
To uncover that.
And I bet you also run into the people who are contacting you aren't the people that are really going to make the decision. They've been delegated. The kind of the person who's going to talk to you, and you're not talking to the right person.
Yeah, but it's a big. We have a mix. There are people like just recently I did a deal with the CEO of a supplement company. Can't tell you the name of it, of course, but he reached out directly. He had recently fired some of his marketing staff. So he really had no digital marketing staff at all. And he was like, look, we've got to figure this out going direct to consumer. And we dealt with him the entire time.
Yeah.
He managed the whole deal and was like, all right, let's go. Boom. And, a bigger company, sometimes it might be a strategist person they're trying to get help with their specific job.
Yeah.
And one component of it, and we have that call and it's like, well, do we think there's opportunity here? Or is this guy is he trying to get some free advice,
Right.
And then ladder it up to the VPs.
And do you run into the madman type situation where they go from one agency to the next agency?
All the time.
Really?
All the time. Yeah. It's a revolving door, this industry. It's very much like the trucking industry or some other commoditized, or if there's a perceived commoditization, there's like
it's just the opposite.
Absolutely. But the perception is that we're all the same. You're just another digital marketing agency, right? And it's like, no, not at all. It cracks me
like you're another wrestler, right? It's an individual.
No. And there is a big difference between the top, or look at Shaun White, the snowboarder. He's from San Diego. I was just watching this documentary the other day with my kids. He won the Olympic gold and he beat everyone so badly in like his first run in Torino in Italy that he was like 4 points ahead of everyone else based on his first run. So his last run, he got to just do whatever he wanted because he was already ahead. He's light years ahead of his competition. These are Olympic athletes and he's up here, The same thing happened in Vancouver, and I feel like we're that way. Like we're the tip of the spear when it comes to digital marketing, especially when it comes to SEO and content marketing. People ask for case studies and we're like, what do you mean? Just go look at our website, just
look at the rank,
go search for something and let me know what you find, But even though you can still say that to someone and they go, yeah, I don't care because I'm a law firm. What other law firms do you work with? And it's a tough question because it's like, well, yeah, now you have to go back and realize, okay, we didn't hit the pain points then, because if that person's asking for case studies, they're asking for a one-to-one match. Like we're not there yet. We need to go back a few steps.
Yeah. And so you go in and you do the beauty contest, and how do you differentiate yourself?
Well, it does start in the discovery process.
Yeah.
It starts by getting them out of the comparison mindset.
Yeah.
You know, my goal and our goal as a department just in sales is to just bypass that whole RFP process, to own our position as the leaders in the industry, and then make sure that we're carrying that theme and that certainty and expectancy through. That's typically what will carry us through. But we do get a lot of tough questions, you know, and people are testing us a lot of times. They'll schedule calls with us with no intention of buying anything. They just want to beat their chest and say, like, I outsmarted Neil Patel's team, you know. That's part of it too. So we get a mixed bag of things, but to bypass that, to like set ourselves apart, one is to demonstrate that we can help them. So usually in that process, I'm trying to hit a flash roll, which is like Oren Klaff's terminology for being able to speak about their industry in a specific way that only an insider would know. Okay. Like if it's trucking or if it's biotech or something, if I can talk about a process in their industry that only someone like of their peers would know, then automatically they don't, like, these guys get us. And now we've leapfrogged ahead of this RFP pack and like, what, you know, what are your features and what are your widgets? Like, they don't care about that anymore. Now they know, like, I'm on their side of the table. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do in that early process. And when we actually do present and share with them our own findings, you know, our own research. So
now in your space, if you get a RFI or an RFP that you have not previously talked to them, or they have not previously shown interest in you, what's the likelihood of you winning?
Well, I'd say in comparison to other agencies, a little higher, because if they've never talked to us before, there's a good chance they found us through organic means. You know, they either saw Neil on LinkedIn or they searched for something. And I've been told this many times. They're like, I've never heard of Neil before, but I searched for an SEO company and there you were. And then once they started digging in, they're like, oh wow, these guys are the real deal. Yeah. So it's not like we're just in a pile of other companies, right? And they're just going to pick their incumbent. You know, like, I mean, that has happened before. But
yeah, so you must be able to prioritize your deals, going like, you know, we're a perfect match for them, and they get it. We're a perfect match, but they don't get it.
Yep.
Right, because your time's limited.
Very limited. Yeah, we are true. Everyone says it like they're real. You know, they say we're picky. We're, you know, we only work with companies we want to work with. Like, we really are in that position. And I get a lot of heat. We do, if we were to try to push a deal through that was not a good fit. It doesn't make sense for us, you know, like, to have the caliber of people we have to push some garbage deal through that everyone's going to be upset. It's just going to hurt our, you know, net promoter score, our reputation, everything like that. So we have to be really careful. And we have turned down a lot of big RFPs where we said, this is like mission impossible. We know they're just fishing for information. They're going to keep their incumbent agency. So why bother? You know, we don't need that. So we're in a unique position.
Now, have you stayed a rep, or do you want to move up into management? Or
no, I've been a rep the whole time. Yeah. And there's one of the rep is a good friend of mine. He's been here for much longer than me, but before we even had this agency, selling from Neil's leads, you know, our other services. But I've been able to help shape the company and just shape what we do and like push the limits of what's possible. But I love what I do. I think everyone realizes that my unique capabilities are being able to like understand a person and understand their company and their business model, and then help them find a solution or find something else, you know? So that's what I love to do. I don't see myself, even though I have been in management many times, I don't really enjoy it. So yeah.
Cool. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to follow you and learn more about you and your company?
They can find me on LinkedIn, just Andrew Miner, look up NP Digital, Neil Patel, or Twitter. I'm on Twitter quite a bit. The handle's the #1 Andrew Miner, and hit me up there. Happy to help anyone who's looking for help.